Hello everyone and welcome to my rune tier list video for Wild Rift patch 6.1. I like to do these sort of videos for the runes and the items to give you all an overview at the start of every single big patch. So for this is 6.1, then next one will be 6.2, 6.3 and so on and so forth. The reason why I do this is because it gives you all kind of a better understanding of what runes are very strong, what runes you should be taking, and maybe runes you should be completely avoiding. But a bit of a disclosure, every single rune is situational. Completely depends on what champion you're playing, the situation, the matchup and everything as well. But honestly, there are some runes that you should be taking every game and some runes you just should be completely avoiding overall. So let's go straight into this. First up, let's talk about the Keystones. Now, the Keystones are very interesting because there are a lot of Keystones that definitely give a lot of champions a lot of value, and there are maybe some Keystones that only give a little bit of value. In the S tier, we have Grasp Undying, still a very strong rune and has been for quite some time. Whether you're playing a tank, whether you're playing a bruiser, even so in the Baron lane, most of the time bruisers take Grasp Undying over Fleet Footwork, over Conqueror, just because of the amount of sustain that Grasp Undying gives, the extra damage, and also the scaling as well that allows you to scale and get more HP over time. So Grasp Undying has always been good for quite some time and will still stay very good. You might be surprised to see Fleet Footwork up here, but the reason why Fleet Footwork is up here is actually because of the jungle interaction at the moment. Now, there are some junglers that have a very slow jungle clear speed, but since the change happened to Fleet Footwork where you can now double auto attack, so you gain 100% attack speed when you proc Fleet Footwork, this actually helps some junglers clear through the jungle a lot quicker. You're seeing this a lot on Gwen jungle, Yone jungle, Jax jungle. I'm trying to think of some others. Viego potentially, even though you lose a little bit of damage. But basically just junglers in general that are normally played in the Baron lane. Fiora is another great example. You take Fleet Footwork in the jungle and you get to clear through the jungle much quicker because Fleet Footwork works on jungle camps. So you auto attack and you get a quick auto attack straight afterwards as well. So it helps your jungle clear speed. It also helps a lot in team fights as well. You know, the extra movement speed that you get, the little bit of sustain. Some Baron laners still take this, but not a lot. Again, the big reason why is just because it just allows more junglers to be in the meta because of this rune. And Lethal Tempo is by far still the best in terms of carrying rune. This rune just gives you so much power and gives so much power to so many marksmen and so many carries in general. The extra attack speed that you get is just absolutely insane. And this rune should always be picked if you're playing any sort of carry in general. The whole situation with First Strike over Electrocute, this is still kind of situational between First Strike and Electrocute, but I think 90% of the time you're going to go for First Strike now. There was a change a few patches ago where some of the damage got reverted. It used to be 9%, went down to 6%, and went up to, now it's back up to 8%, I believe. So the damage now that you get with First Strike is a lot more than Electrocute. Yes, Electrocute is a bit more reliable in terms of being able to stack, but First Strike is still very easy as well. You take this on a lot of assassin junglers, you take this on a lot of mid laners as well, even mages to try and poke like Victor and Syndra. So overall First Strike is very, very strong. You get a lot of true damage and a lot of gold over time. Conqueror is still good, but it's definitely a lot weaker than what it was before, to be honest. It's still kind of more of a situational rune where, you know, do you need more damage? Do you need more sustain maybe with Grasp? Do you need more sustain with Fleet Footwork, or maybe even more damage with Lethal Tempo? Most of the time, champions take everything else over Conqueror right now. I can't think of really many champions that take Conqueror unless they want like sustained damage over time. But like marksmen either take Lethal Tempo or sometimes even Fleet Footwork. Baron laners take Grasp Undying now. So, you know, assassins take First Strike. So Conqueror in general is still a very good rune, but in most scenarios you want to take other runes just because it gives you more value. Arcane Comet, the early game damage is not as good as what it was before, but the scaling damage is absolutely insane. If you can use this on champions that can easily stack it, and I say easily stack, it's not just landing your abilities, but it's also making sure the Arcane Comet hits at the same time. So champions like Lux, for example, which can slow when landing third ability or root when the first ability, Morgana the same as well as Zyra. These are champions that not only do a lot of poke damage, but it is also made easier to land Arcane Comet. The more Arcane Comets you land, the more damage you're going to be dealing. So overall, it's a great mage rune that gives you a lot of damage. And Glacial Augment, still better than Aftershock. I always compare like First Strike and Electrocute and Glacial Augment and Aftershock because they both kind of feel the same purpose. With Aftershock, obviously you get more sustain for yourself and you give more durability to yourself, but Glacial Augment is still great. The AoE slow that you get, the damage reduction that you get as well. Yes, you get more damage reduction with Aftershock, but Glacial Augment is just overall a better rune just for team fights and just in general. You know, every single tank support still takes Glacial Augment. Even some junglers take Glacial Augment as well. The only time you'd really take Aftershock if you're playing more like damage junglers, maybe like Nunu, Maokai, or Amumu, champions like that maybe want more damage and don't really get much value with Glacial Augment, then these champions can take Aftershock. But outside of that, everyone else just takes Glacial Augment. As I said, every single tank support now takes Glacial Augment just because it is a better rune right now than Aftershock, and that's what you should be running. Phase Rush is still quite unique. It's only really built on a few champions. It's nice for the ability haste and the movement speed, but outside of that, it doesn't really give you that much value. It's really good on champions that already have a lot of damage, like Swain, for example. You get a lot of damage already with your items like Malignance and Death Cap, so you kind of want more utility with Phase Rush, so then champions stay in the ultimate. But outside of that, like I said, Phase Rush doesn't really get used too much. Again, it's just more to do with movement speed and ability haste, but you don't really get that much damage. And Empowerment, still not that strong in my opinion. I mean, they tried Kraken Slayer before. They now have Empowerment, which is weaker, which is kind of like a nerfed version of Press the Attack. Yeah, overall, this rune is not that great. It's why champions like Lucian are not really that strong at the moment, because their only option is Empowerment, and Empowerment just in general is a very weak rune. Kind of same with Kindred, but even Kindred now doesn't really run Empowerment. Sometimes Kindred players like to run Conqueror or even Fleet Footwork and Lethal Tempo instead. So in general, this rune is pretty weak right now in terms of you want to do a lot of burst damage, but the burst damage is kind of difficult to deal to one single target, especially in team fights. And I mentioned Aftershock and Electrocute already, but in general, these runes just have better replacements like First Strike over Electrocute and Glacial Augment over Aftershock. And summon area you might be surprised to see in C tier. I mean, maybe it's a little bit sad to see area in C tier. This is the rune for every enchanter support, and most of the time it is. But I mean, even so, champions like Sona, Seraphine, even sometimes Nami, really sometimes can take Glacial Augment instead, or just another rune, just because they get so much value with the auto attacks and the slows. The area is kind of just getting weaker and weaker. The shielding is great, but the damage that you deal with summon area is just so bad. Like in PC League, for example, there are some mid laners that take summon area because you get, again, nice damage. It's very reliable, kind of similar to like Electrocute in a way. It's pretty reliable if you can hit through abilities very quickly, but the damage in Wild Rift is just so low. The shielding is great, the damage is just way too low in opinion, so that's why Eri is sitting in C tier. Domination tree. The reason why no rune in the domination tree is S tier is because you never want to take this as a primary tree. This is by far the weakest tree, and has been for quite some time, to be fair. This is by far the weakest tree to take. Junglers always take either precision, I mean most of the time it's actually precision, or resolve tree. Top laners take resolve tree. Mid laners either take resolve tree or even inspiration tree. AD carries take precision tree every single game, and supports take resolve tree. Like, this gets built by no lane, no sort of champions, nothing like that. Like, these runes in general are just very weak. However, there are some runes that you can still take as a secondary option in like the final part of the tree is like your single secondary rune, and these three runes here are the best secondary runes to take. Zombie wards, probably a little bit weaker in lower elos, I would say, because people don't ward as much, but the amount of ability power that you get from zombie ward is a lot, especially in the early game. If you're playing supports or if you're playing a mid lane, you can clear some wards, or even jungle, to be fair, and you can walk around with your sweeper, clear some wards. You get a lot of extra ability power on AD with zombie ward for free, basically. So zombie ward is very powerful as a secondary rune. Sudden impact, of course, with the changes, so with sudden impact now you get the extra true damage at level, I believe it's level 5 and level 10, and the extra movement speed. It's a great rune for champions that don't have too many dashes, but when they dash, they want to go in. So for champions like Ambessa, for example, that have way too many dashes, or even sometimes Lee Sin, but Lee Sins are maybe a little bit more reliable. These champions just dash all the time that you don't get that much value from sudden impact. But as I mentioned, Lee Sin, Aatrox is another great example. Kayn, Kha'Zix, these champions that when they do dash in and when they do turn invisible, they're looking for a gauge every single time. So you get the true damage, you get the extra movement speed, and overall this rune is pretty decent. I mean, it's not that broken that it's in obviously S tier that you need to take every single game, but there are some champions that still want to take overgrowth for the extra sustain over time. But a sudden impact's pretty decent. And also Genius Hunter, and Genius Hunter is one of the most popular enchanter support runes right now, since it works on cooldowns of your active support items, your redemption, harmonic echo, these sort of items that can lower the cooldowns and give you more power, give you more healing and shielding. Ingenious Hunter is empowering that even more, just giving you more healing and shielding over time. So pretty underrated rune right now. And then in B tier, these are just runes that you normally take if you take the primary tree as domination. Like if domination is your primary tree, you would go for these runes. But in general, these runes are just very weak right now. I mean, cheap shot, yes, you get the nice little bit of true damage, but I'm pretty sure the true damage on sudden impact is now more than cheap shot. I mean, look at this. Deals 10 to 45 bonus true damage to enemies whose movement is impaired. Deal 10 to 80 true damage, and that gets even more, an additional 10, an additional 20. So you can get up to like 120 true damage, whereas cheap shot is 45 damage. I mean, that just explains it for itself how weak something like cheap shot is, and it's only a 3-second long cooldown as well. So yeah, cheap shot not very strong right now in terms of damage. Mark of the week as well. Again, because this is adaptive damage, it happens, the damage happens after the enemy magic resist and the enemy's armor. So again, the damage is very weak. Scorch overall as well, again, the damage is pretty weak. They tried to buff this rune a few times, but again, this rune is pretty weak right now in terms of you want to get early power with this rune and you want to use this to your advantage. But to be honest, with the durability buff, it's very hard to actually poke champions out and try and get them out of laning phase because everyone's just a lot more reliable. Empowered attack, again, you'd rather take brutal, you'd rather take any other rune than empowered attack. It's nice that this only works on champions now and not on minions, but still I think the rune is pretty bad. And eyeball collector, it's nice if you can get a lot of kills, and in general Wild Rift is a game that you can get a lot of kills and you can farm this up pretty quickly, but it's actually much more reliable to go for zombie ward rather than eyeball collector. And I'm pretty sure you get more AP and AD. I could be wrong. 1 to 2 ability power, 3 to 6. Yeah, you get more from zombie ward. So you get more from zombie ward than eyeball collector, and zombie ward is also can be a lot more reliable. Again, it kind of depends on your elo. And then C tier, psychic wave is only basically used on potentially like Ari and Twisted Fate, maybe, but even then the rune does very little damage, and shield bash just doesn't get used on anyone. This rune is not very strong. You don't really do a lot of damage with it, and yeah, you much rather take other runes instead. Inspiration tree, Transcendence. Hopefully this is updated. I'm pretty sure it is updated. So Transcendence change was very weird in 6.1. They nerfed the level 9 part where it reduces your abilities cooldown after you use the basic ability and hit a target. It went from, I believe it was 12% down to 10%, if I'm not mistaken, or maybe 15% down to 10%. But they pushed forward all the levels. So now instead of level 6 and level 10, it's now level 5 and level 9. So you actually get the ability haste earlier. And to be honest, that's the main strong part about this rune, is how much ability haste you get at level 9. It's not really like the 10% reduction when I hit an ability. It's more the ability haste itself that you're getting, which is going to be extremely powerful. Again, mages love this a lot. Enchanter supports love this a lot as well. So the amount of ability haste that you can get with this rune is still very high, and that's why this rune is still very, very powerful. Sweet Tooth plus Ecstatic Seajar is still a very strong combo. If you don't know this combo, basically with Sweet Tooth, every time you pick up Honey Fruit, you're healing 20% more, and also you're gaining 15 golds with each one, basically. 15 gold with the Honey Fruit. With Ecstatic Seajar, you can pick up this plant, replant the Sweet Tooth, or replant the Honey Fruit, I should say, on the floor, and pick up another 15 gold. So you're basically getting 30 gold every time instead of 15 gold every time. And again, this also works with the Scryer's Bloom. It also works with the little red trap as well, which I can't remember the name of, but again, it offers you more mobility, it gives you more vision in objectives. Overall, these two runes together are very, very powerful right now. And then your third rune is normally your third rune is normally like Nimbus Cloak, which is down here. I was going to say Transcendence, but I'm pretty sure Transcendence is in the same tree as Ixtali Sieger. Hex Flash is still very good. It did get nerfed a few times, but Hex Flash is still very powerful, especially on engaged supports or just engaged champions in general, like a Mumu, for example. That surprise potential that you can get from Hex Flashing over a wall, or even getting that little bit of a dash when you press the ability, can actually make a really big difference. And that's why this rune is still very, very strong right now. B-tier mana flow band, very good on champions that want to go for Seraph Embrace or Mirror Mana, because the extra mana obviously means extra damage towards them items. In general, you don't really need that much mana in Wild Rift because you have Boots of Mana and now Boots of Lucidity, which both of these give base mana regeneration over time. So you actually skip this rune most of the time. That's why it's in B tier. But it can empower some of these other items to make them even more powerful. Pathfinder is really good if you want a lot of ganking, if you want more movement speed when it comes to the river. Really good for gank heavy champions like Java, Nunu, for example. Just allows you to get around the map much quicker. Demolish, very powerful for tanks and for champions that can really take advantage during the laning phase. I really like this on Ornn, for example. The more HP that you build, the more damage you'll be dealing with Demolish. Ornn pretty much wins most laning phases, even though it's supposed to be a tank. And if you can walk up, proc a few tower platings, whilst the enemy champion is back in base, that extra bit of 150 gold per tower plating gives you a really big bonus. And Nimbus Cloak, extra movement speed when you use the summoner spell. In general, this rune is pretty good. It just doesn't give you any damage, which is why it's kind of low, but in general it can work for some champions, especially for Ghost, because you get the Ghost movement speed and also the Nimbus Cloak movement speed as well. So both of them go hand in hand and work pretty well together. And then C tier, item craft and futures market. These runes are just never clicked, to be fair. These runes never get built. They were added, God, when were they added now? It might have been beginning of patch 5.0 or something, maybe 5.1 or 5.2. I can't remember exactly when it was. It was last year anyway. These runes got added last year. They just haven't hit. I mean, item crafting is just, you get zero value basically from item crafting. And futures market, again, you just get zero value from as well. So both of these are just not very strong right now, because futures market, yes, you can buy the items earlier, but you're still in debt, so you're not actually gaining any value. And item crafting, the items are going to cost more gold. So yeah, not that strong, unfortunately. Precision tree, probably one of the strongest, if not the strongest tree right now. I believe it's Precision and Resolve both have 3 runes in the S tier right now, just because these two are the best trees to go for. Legend Bloodline or Legend Alacrity, both these runes are pretty situational, which one you want to go for. Both of these are very, very strong. Again, remember, Bloodline is Omnivamp, so it works on true damage, it works on magic damage, and it works on physical damage. So any sort of burst damage or any sort of sustained damage that you can deal, if you have Bloodline built in, you're going to get a lot of healing as well. And Legend Alacrity just gives you a crazy amount of attack speed over time, up to 20% bonus attack speed, which is absolutely nuts. Of course, very good for champions who want to also attack a lot, and AD carries as well. And Giant Slayer, probably the strongest second row tree at the moment for precision, because most of the time you're going to be against, I would say, at least 2 bruisers or 2 tanks on the enemy team. So the value that you get, the extra bonus damage that you get with champions that have more than 1,600 bonus health is very, very nice. This is more of understanding what champions you're against and kind of working out in your head how much health they're going to be buying. So for example, someone like Vi, if a Vi goes Trinity Force and Sundered Sky, you might think, I'm not getting that much value, but you actually are, because Trinity Force gives you health, Sundered Sky gives you health. They also might buy defensive boots as well, which also gives you bonus health. So all this bonus health that you're getting from items and even runes as well are going to allow you to do more damage. A tier, Brutal versus a Gathering Storm, again, is pretty situational. Both these runes are actually very good right now. Gathering Storm, I would say more so on AP champions, since you get more AP rather than AD, but it still can be very good if you want to play AD junglers that have a lot of scaling, especially assassins. This can work very good on as well. But Brutal is still good for auto attack champions. If you're playing any auto attack junglers or any auto attack champions in lane, Brutal is still very strong just for the extra auto attack damage. Actually makes quite a big difference. B tier Legend Tenacity. Perseverance as a rune in the Resolve tree is a lot better than Tenacity, just because you get more Tenacity at the start of the game. You also get the extra resistances. Legend Tenacity just never really gets built, since Legend Bloodline and Legend Alacrity just gives you more sustain and more damage. It's very difficult to find a game where Tenacity is worth more than these two other runes. Triumph, in my opinion, is just worse than Brutal and Gathering. It's very good for like reset champions, like Ambessa, for example. Viego, it can work, but then you lose out on a lot of damage if you don't go Brutal or Gathering Storm. But Triumph's pretty meh. And then Coup de Grace as well. I've already mentioned how Giant Slayer is very strong right now. Coup de Grace is like this secondary option, but like 80% of the time, I would say, or maybe even 90% of the time, you take Giant Slayer versus Coup de Grace. But again, it depends on the enemy champions. And then Last Stand is just very unique. It only works on a few champions like Dr. Mundo and Trendemir, champions that are stay very low on health for a long amount of time, and then maybe just you know, do a bunch of AoE damage close by. Amumu is also another good example. That is a tank. When you're below 60% health, you still have a lot of health, but you do a lot of AoE damage, so you want to stay in fights for a long amount of time. Moving finally into the Resolve tree. Second Wind, probably, I would say, probably the strongest rune in the game right now. I can't think of any other rune that's stronger than Second Wind. Of course, it's much stronger on melee champions, but every single bruiser and every single tank, basically every single melee champion that plays in a lane, even supports as well, like melee supports, always take Second Wind. The double value that you get when you're a melee champion is absolutely crazy. You can take a short trade during laning phase, walk away. In a few seconds, you'll be back up to like half HP for free. It's crazy how much healing you get from Second Wind, again, especially as a melee champion. Nullifying Orb in general is just a very strong rune. It's by far the best rune in that first row in the Resolve tree, and it's much better than Courage Colossus and Fun to Life. Of course, it's much more reliable than Courage of the Colossus as well, so that's why Nullifying Orb is up in S tier. As I mentioned before, Perseverance, probably one of the most underrated and the strongest runes right now. If you're against a lot of crowd control, the extra armor and magic resist that you're going to get when you're immobilized is very strong for survivability, and it just keeps you alive, which is great. Overgrowth still used a lot on junglers. It's kind of like a difference between Overgrowth and Sudden Impact at the moment. Both of these two runes are kind of like one or the other. Do you want more damage? Do you want more carry potential? Or maybe you need a bit more survivability because you're against assassins, so you go for Overgrowth instead. So Overgrowth can be very good still on junglers, can be very powerful. Bone Plating just in general is very good on ranged champions, because if you get dove on by any assassins or any bruisers at all, you're going to just be taking reduced damage. Most AD carries take this, if not all AD carries take this at the moment, so that's very strong. Courage of Colossus, in my opinion, is good, but it's just a little bit less reliable. Sometimes you might not hit any crowd control in a team fight, which obviously is very unlikely. But the shield in general doesn't scale as much with HP, if I'm not mistaken. It's like 2%, or yeah, it's 1% of your maximum health. So again, the scaling is not that great. If this went up to like 2 or 3%, it'd be very, very powerful. But 1% means that, you know, you don't get as much shielding as like Nullifying Orb, for example. And Fun to Life is and can be good on enchanter supports, especially long range supports that can allow your team to heal. You also get you can also get a bit of self healing as well. So you can use this sometimes on some top laners that maybe you have abilities that can poke champions or deal damage to a champions, and you can auto attack afterwards to get the self healing. But most of the time, this is used on like enchanter supports just to help with sustain over time. C tier Revitalize. Maybe Revitalize should be B tier, to be fair. I think Revitalize is pretty good. I think with the extra healing and shielding percentage now on supports and with the items plus Revitalize, you get a crazy amount of healing and shielding now. So Revitalize could move up to B tier, but the problem is that it doesn't help self-sustain champions. So it doesn't give like Mundo more healing. It doesn't give runes more healing, you know, things like that. It's only really used for champions that have healing and shielding and want to amplify that. If it had like inbuilt healing buff as well, it'd be pretty nice. And Onslaught just never gets picked. You have Perseverance in the same tree. Why would you go Onslaught instead of something else? I'm pretty sure Onslaught is the same tree as Perseverance as well. I'm pretty sure. I could be wrong, but yeah, I mean, Perseverance is like 20 times better than Onslaught. And then Loyalty is by far the worst rune still in the game. I don't know why the fuck this rune is still in the game. Like, please just remove this rune or delete it. The only champion this is good on is Yuumi. And that's because you sit on top of someone for the entire game so they get bonus stats. That is the only champion that can use this rune. Other than that, it is fucking useless. It is terrible. This is the same tree, by the way, as Bone Plating and the Second Wind. Like, it's just absolutely disgusting. But anyway, that is my general Rune tier list for patch 6.1. Just wanted to give you a quick rundown of the runes in general. If any of you have any questions about the runes, maybe you feel like a rune deserves to be in a higher tier or a lower tier because you've had more success on the rune, maybe you think loyalty is S tier. Who knows at this point? I mean, it's Wild Rift, anything can happen. But yeah, hopefully you enjoyed this rundown of the rune tier list. Again, if you want to comment down below, I always reply to the comments. If you have any questions or anything else, please let me know. And as always, take care. Until next time, peace out.